All right, today we're going to flip the world upside down and take a deep dive into the incredible, decade-long journey of the Netflix mega hit Stranger Things. We're talking from a humble pitch that almost nobody wanted to a global phenomenon. This is the story of how Hawkins was built. So, it all kicked off with this one simple but powerful idea. In their original pitch, the Duffer Brothers laid out a vision that was all about merging the wonder of Spielberg with the bone-chilling horror of Stephen King. And, this wasn't just some catchy tagline. It was literally the creative DNA for the entire show, the blueprint for everything that was to come. Here's the plan for our journey today. We're going to start with the show's original concept, then jump into how they created all those iconic elements. After that, we'll track its crazy growth, see how it navigated a real-world crisis, and finally, look at the massive task of wrapping it all up. Okay, first up, the show's early days. And it's kind of wild to think about now, but the idea for Stranger Things was actually rejected by over a dozen studios. Seriously, nobody wanted it, until Netflix finally decided to take a gamble. The show we know and love, it almost wasn't. The original idea was actually called Montauk. It was set on Long Island and based on these really creepy, real-life conspiracy theories about a secret government lab. But by moving the story to the fictional town of Hawkins, Indiana, the creators gave themselves way more creative freedom while still keeping that core idea of a secret experiment gone horribly wrong. All right, now let's get into the really cool stuff, how they actually brought the Upside Down to life. We're talking about everything from the monsters to that unforgettable music. This right here, this philosophy was absolutely crucial. The Duffer Brothers wanted that tangible, in-your-face horror they grew up with. They didn't just want some CGI ghost on a screen. They wanted something truly bizarre, something that felt real. And they drew inspiration from absolute legends like H.R. Geiger and Guillermo del Toro to do it. So how do you actually build a Demogorgon? Well, it was this incredible mix of old school and new school magic. The plan was to use mostly practical effects. First, they drew up the concept art. Then, the amazing effects company Spectral Motion built a full-on monster suit that an actor could wear on set. The head was this insane animatronic designed so its petals would open in these creepy, unpredictable ways. It was only for the stuff the suit couldn't do, like smashing through a wall, that the VFX team would step in. And get this, their obsession with practical effects went way beyond just the monsters. For those iconic sensory deprivation scenes with Eleven, they didn't just use wires or fake it. Nope. They filled a kiddie pool with 1,200 pounds of Epsom salt so that Millie Bobby Brown would actually physically float. Now that's commitment. Of course, you can't even think about Stranger Things without that theme music, right? Well, that Emmy-winning track came from Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein of the band SURVIV. And the wild part is, the Duffer Brothers had found one of their old demos and used it in their original pitch video. The final theme was built from that rescue track, using classic synths like a Roland Jupiter 8 for that haunting lead sound. They absolutely nailed that classic 80s vibe without it ever feeling cheesy. And then it just exploded. The show becomes this massive, unexpected global hit. So let's look at how that success completely changed the game. The budget, the scale, and, of course, the lives of the cast. Just to give you a sense of how massive this thing got, look at these numbers. By season 4, the budget per episode had skyrocketed to $30 million. That is double the cost of the final season of Game of Thrones. This wasn't just a TV show anymore. This was a series of blockbuster movies. And honestly, nothing tells the story of this meteoric rise better than the paychecks. In season 1, the main kids were making about $20,000 an episode. Pretty good, right? Well, by the time they negotiated for the final season, that number jumped to almost $875,000 per episode. That's just a mind-blowing testament to how important they and the show had become. But just when things were at their absolute biggest, the world threw a curveball that no one could have predicted. The pandemic wasn't just a delay. It was a real-world monster that forced the team to get incredibly, incredibly creative just to keep the show going. Look at this timeline. It's just brutal. They started filming season 4 in March 2020, got 2 weeks in, and then, bam, everything stops. Production didn't start up again for 8 long months. All in all, filming for that one season took 18 months to complete. It was a logistical nightmare, which led to this, just an impossible production puzzle. They needed to film a huge scene for season 4 with Billy, the character played by Dacre Montgomery. But he was stuck in Australia because of travel restrictions, while the rest of the crew was in the US. How on earth do you make that work? The answer? Pure 21st century filmmaking magic. The director, Sean Levy, literally directed Dacre Montgomery over a Zoom call while he acted on a soundstage in Australia. But here is the craziest part. Sadie Sink's half of that scene had already been filmed a full year earlier. And what's amazing is that this huge technical problem actually made the scene better. It gave it this weird, uncanny vibe that felt totally intentional. So that brings us to the end of the road. After a decade of work, the team is facing the absolutely monumental task of bringing this sprawling, beloved story to a satisfying conclusion with its 5th and final season. And to kick off this final section, you just have to look at these final paydays. The cast was sorted into different tiers for their final contracts. The A tier, Winona Ryder and David Harbour, are each making $9.5 million for the season. The core kids are taking home over $7 million, and the teens over $6 million. This isn't just a salary. It's a number that reflects the immense pressure and expectation riding on this finale. And the scale of this last season is it's huge. Filming started in January 2024 and is expected to last almost a full year. After that, they'll need a ton of time for post-production to get all the special effects just right. So it looks like we'll probably see the final season sometime in early 2026, which would be exactly a decade after the show first premiered. Wow. You know, when you step back and you look at the whole picture, it's so clear that this is more than just a hit show. It really is a generational phenomenon. The cast grew up making it, and we all kind of grew up watching it. It started as this small, nerdy love letter to the 80s and became a story that truly defined a decade of television. And this little detail about the end of filming, it just hits you right in the feels. The very first scene they ever filmed for the entire series was of the kids playing Dungeons & Dragons in Mike's basement. So, to close out this 10-year chapter of their lives, the cast and crew got together for one last game of D&D. Just a perfect full circle moment. So that leaves us with the big question. The pressure to stick the landing here is just immense. After 10 years, after watching these characters grow up, and with millions of fans around the world holding their breath, is it even possible for a finale to live up to all that? What's the legacy of Hawkins going to be? I guess we're all going to have to find out together.